Hi, I'm Baxter Adams. We're with Kinley Posey, Bradford Woodhouse, and Alyssa Soria, and we're discussing Spanish Fort's Hydro investment decision.
All right, so a little bit of an overview. This is, like Baxter said, the best assessment of Spanish Fork Hydro's investment proposition of acquiring 5 new wastewater treatment plants in the state of Utah. These new plants would require the implementation of membrane bioreactor technology. And we analyzed the various qualitative and quantitative risk factors and scenarios, and the findings are as follows.
So we can see just off of the Excel base case, we have a net present value of 4,200,000, which is pretty good. We have an IRR of 13.7, which is above the discount rate of 12. So originally it's looking like a pretty good investment, but we're going to dive into some risk factors and then give a final assessment at the end.
Alrighty, moving on to the qualitative risk factors. For concession agreements, there are many risk factors. One of the main ones is the tariffs. So currently tariffs at year one are 82 cents per cubic meter and are projected to increase 4% annually. Tariffs could decrease due to political pressures, economic downturns, or efficiency improvements, which could in turn cause the government to lower the tariffs. This risk level is at a medium because they are subject to government approval. They take longer to approve. And due to the 8-year concession period, it usually is not a huge factor to consider. In order to mitigate this risk, a tariff floor of 2% and a cap of 6% could be negotiated with the government.
Moving on, another risk factor we analyzed was technology. This has a low risk level. One way to mitigate the low risk is to replicate standardized NPR models that have been deployed successfully. For example, the models that have been used in the very successful Detroit plant. This reduces design flaws and underperformance risk when we're implementing this technology throughout the 5 new power plants. Um, and utilizing these designs has been proven to work, and it continues to meet criteria and in a cost effective manner.
One of the major risk factors that we're going to be going into would be unexpected rises in electricity costs. This would be a high risk factor because electricity is one of the two major variable costs of operating this plant along with chemicals. So if electricity rises, our margins are going to shrink dramatically. We'll get into some scenario analysis later showing that, but some ways that we could mitigate this risk is to lock in a corporate PPA for energy, which would basically give us set rates for a certain amount of years, or we could look into producing our own energy or trying to cut down on how much energy we use, which would allow our margins to grow and give us a cushion in case of an unexpected rise.
The final risk factor we want to talk about is the environmental impact. For a little bit of background, we had a professional consultant come. He gave an assessment to our plant a couple of years ago, and he found limited and reversible risks. For that reason, we've decided that the risk factor is low. And even with that, for risk mitigation, we decided that the advanced technology which we're building, the MBR, which Kinley was talking about, is built to be compliant and more eco-friendly, leading to fewer spillovers and less sludge in the environment. And we will always, this is a little stipulation to be aware of, we'll always be accountable for breaches of environmental policy, even if end users violate their policy, not us. So this could lead to an increase in variable costs as we have to do payouts and other potential delays in payments and tariff. But even with that, the scenario analysis we ran on accounts receivable and variable costs increasing are fairly negligible when it comes to NPV, and the odds of them occurring is low, like we said, due to this assessment we did earlier. We wanted to get into our scenario analysis. This in the top right, you see the base case with the NPV, discount rate, and IRR for the original analysis, and we did scenarios that we're going to talk about individually now.
For example, scenario A would be if chemical costs or electricity costs or some other variable costs rise. And we showed that by increasing operating expenses by 5%, moving it from 46% of revenue to 51% of revenue. And the result of that is it actually took our NPV negative. So it shows that we are relatively inflexible with variable costs, So that's something that we need to be aware of and focus on mitigating first.
Alrighty, so for scenario B, this is where the receivable collections period increases from 15 days to 30 days. This could be due to an economic downturn where users have a delayed payment period, where in turn the municipal government would have a delayed period. So this would increase the receivables collection period to 30 days. And in turn, compared to the base case, our NPV is still positive, but it would decrease by almost 2 million.
Scenario C, we see a increase in the discount rate from 12% to 15%. This could be due to that MBR technology we talked about earlier, some unforeseen costs or upgrades that need to be implemented while we're installing that technology across the different plants. This, we can see it affects NPV and it actually does put it negative, which is something to look out for, and it shows that our discount rate is subject to change.
The final scenario, scenario D, is a combination of the other three scenarios to some extent. So the operation expenses increase, the accounts receivable period increases, and the required in turn increases slightly. So this could be due to things like we already talked about, this technology increasing prices, the government bureaucracy delaying our payment a little bit, or even other macroeconomic circumstances that might lead the market to push for a higher rate of return and higher costs that would push us to increase for a higher rate of return. And with all these factors combined, our NPV does drop negative to 385 in the red, and the IRR drops to 12.84%. Both of these are negative and encourage us not to invest, but the combination of these could be mitigated in some expense like we talked about in the previous slides.
Alrighty, so overall, we recommend investing in the Spanish Fork Hydro's investment. This investment aligns with Spanish Fork Investment's goal of increasing its investment arm. Despite numerous risk factors, mitigation factors are put into place to combat these and to ensure a resilient positive return. Overall, this project allows Spanish Fork Investments to achieve its investment goal with a minimal risk. Thank you.